Hi kids, it's Mrs. Fravel. How are you? Good. Yeah, me too. I'm fine. Today we're going to talk about ocean zones. This is the last concept in the oceanography unit for marine biology. So without further ado, let's get going. Talk about how we label the parts of the ocean, because as humans we like to label everything. So the ocean, remember last time we talked about in class, we talked about the sea floor and the continental margins. Let me get out of the way. I'm going to be moving around a lot. So the seafloor and continental margins, remember there's two types of continental margins. There are active and passive margins. Active ones are much steeper than this. This is more of a passive slope. But every continental margin where a continent meets the ocean, the seafloor is labeled at that margin. So we have the continental shelf, and then where it drops off is called the shelf break. It's the drop off, literally, and then continental slope. At the bottom of that slope, and this is where the ocean floor it turns from continental crust into oceanic crust generally. We have the slope, and then at the bottom we have continental rise. That's just sediment that has slid down that slope and accumulated right there. And then we have the bottom of the ocean, which is also called the abyssal plain. Okay, so this is what we talked about last week in class. There's more. There's always more with science, right? Both the sea floor and the water column are divided into different parts, and they are provinces. We have the seafloor provinces, and then we have the open ocean provinces, and then each of those provinces are separated into zones. So if it helps, you can kind of think about it like each one of those is a state, like the state of Utah and the state of California maybe. And then each of those states is divided into counties, right? Same thing with the open ocean and the sea floor. They're both separated into zones, okay? We call everything that is on the sea floor, that's called the benthic environment. Sometimes you'll see benthic realm. And then the open ocean, the water part, we call the pelagic environment, or the pelagic realm. So that's the water from the sea floor to the surface, or vice versa, okay? Benthic zone, the benthic realm is separated into these zones, okay? So this is the sea floor. It's called the benthic realm or benthic environment. These are separated into two big provinces, and each province is separated into zones. So again, you can think about it like this. Benthic is the state. The provinces are counties. The zones are like cities, okay? So the benthic province that is on the continental shelf, so the shelf, break, slope, we also call those by these names. That whole area is called the subneritic province. So that's the continental shelf, just the part like that you would walk on if you went on the beach and out into the water. The littoral zone is between the high tide and the low tide mark. So that's on the beach. Half the time the tide covers it, because we talked about tides, right? And then beyond the low tide mark and out to the continental shelf break, we call that the sublittoral zone. Okay. You'll also see these termed as tidal and subtidal. So that's on the continental shelf. And then the sea floor out beyond the continental shelf, we call that suboceanic because it's under the ocean, suboceanic. Okay. So that's the sea floor beyond the shelf break, beyond the drop off. The bathal zone, that's the continental slope. Abyssal zone, that's the sea floor out on the abyssal plain. And then we have hadal zone, that's what we call the sea floor down in the trenches. So make sure that you fill all these in on the note guide that I will link as a Google Doc. This is what that looks like. So we have all of this under here is the benthic environment. Then the benthic environment is split into two provinces, the subneritic, which is broken into the littoral zone, that's the beach, and the sublittoral zone, that is from the low tide to the shelf. So high tide to low tide is littoral. Low tide to shelf break is the sublittoral zone. Okay? In the benthic environment, the suboceanic province under the ocean, we get the bathal zone is the seafloor on the continental slope. The abyssal zone is the abyssal plain, and then hadal zone is down in those super deep trenches. Okay? And here's again what that looks like. Sublittoral, oops, sorry, I clicked too many things. Sublittoral, we have littoral, sublittoral, then we have bathal, abyssal, hadal down in the trench. And then we have the pelagic environment. So this is, pelagic means open water. That's just what it means. We will talk about pelagic animals as well. We will talk about benthic animals as well. Benthic animals live on the seafloor. Pelagic animals live in the open water of the ocean. So the open water is separated a little bit differently. The pelagic environment is separated into two provinces. The neritic province, which is the water above the continental shelf. That's it. All of the water above the continental shelf from high tide mark to shelf break, that is the neritic province. Okay? Then all of the other water from the shelf break out is the oceanic province. It's the ocean, right? And that is divided into zones by depth. We have the epipelagic, mesopelagic, bathopelagic, abyssopelagic, and hadal zones of water. And so those go by depth. Here are their depth measurements. Make sure you fill those in. Okay. And this you should have on the note guide. So if you're doing this at home, do your best. I mean, you can always just write this out on paper, print out the note guide, but you want to make sure that you know all of the words. So we have, again, the very surface of the water, 200 meters deep. That is the epipelagic zone. So if you've ever been out on the ocean in a boat, you're sitting on the epipelagic zone. And then the mesopelagic is the second deepest, bathy, abysso, hado, pelagic. And there is a video. Mr. Ray sings the zones. I will put just this PowerPoint also on Canvas, so you can go click that link, okay? And then, so there's more. So the pelagic zones are also delineated by their lights. So how much sunlight penetrates the ocean? Sunlight can only go so far. And then it starts to scatter so much that we can't perceive it anymore. And the most sunlight where the brightest, the lightest part of the ocean is called the euphotic zone. And this is the epipelagic zone out in the ocean, and the littoral and sublittoral zones in the benthic areas. Okay, so this is where the most life happens in the sea. This is where all of the coral reefs exist. This is where all of the plankton floats, zooplankton. This is where most pelagic animals exist, with whales, tuna, big fish, sharks. Most of them live in the euphotic zone with sunlight. And then we have the dysphotic zone. This is like the twilight zone. It's starting to get a little dim. It's not enough light to support photosynthesis, so we don't get any algae or kelp there. And this goes from about 80 meters down to 260 meters down. There is quite a bit of life down there. We didn't think there was, but the mesopelagic and the dysphotic zones are quite abundant in biodiversity, just not plants. And the animals that live there, very often, they will vertically migrate up into the epipelagic zone at night. They'll come up to eat plankton, and then they go back down during the day to hide. Okay? Pretty slick. And then the very deepest part where no sunlight can penetrate, that's called the aphotic zone. Okay? So remember, the word part A always means not or away from. Dis means kind of. Yeah? U means with. So aphotic, no light. That's the bathopelagic, abyssopelagic, hadopelagic, everything down in the bottom. It's very dark. This is most of the ocean. Most of the ocean is dark black. And Again, humans historically have kind of always thought that that meant there was nothing going on down there. There was nothing living down there. And we know now that that isn't true. It's just the life down there is very different and it runs on different energy sources. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the deep sea ecosystems. Okay. Okay. I think that's it. Any questions? Okay. So make sure you know all of those words and make sure that you can label diagrams of the ocean zones. And to do that, on Canvas, there is an assignment that has this, this worksheet on it. Again, I don't know if you'll have to print them out, but on the assignment, you need to fill in all of the labels. And unfortunately, I could not get it to work the way I wanted it to work. So I'm sorry. Again, you might need to print it out and color it and fill it in. I'm still learning so much of the technology and I need to redo this one. I just can't get it to work right. So print it out, color it, answer the questions on the back page, and then upload a screenshot of it. Or if you can figure out how to insert the words onto the Google Doc, you win the internet. You're way better than me because I couldn't get it to work. So anyway, that's your assignment. There will be a test next week on all of this. So you're going to do this today, this week, and then you're also going to do the test review sheet. So I will stack all of those in the module, make sure that you know everything on them, okay? All right, you guys are great. If you are working from home, thank you for working from home. If you are in quarantine, thank you for quarantining safely. And I hope to see y'all soon, okay? Have a great day. Have a great week. This is all due next week, okay? Bye-bye.